Welcome to Tika's Midnight Tales. Tonight, let your mind drift into a story woven beneath the glow of lantern light. A gentle rain falls outside, the world grows quiet, and only the soft flicker of a flame remains. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow this tale to guide you into peace. This is the Lantern Keeper's Tale. The night stretched long and silent. A velvet canvas scattered with faint silver stars. Beyond the forest edge, a single lantern burned, its glow cutting softly through the darkness. It belonged to the Lantern Keeper, a solitary figure whose quiet duty was to keep the flame alive. In a small wooden hut, nestled at the edge of the woods, he tended the light with care, polishing the glass, trimming the wick, and feeding the flame with oil drawn from his worn brass flask. The lantern was more than light. It was memory, it was guidance, it was a promise. Villagers spoke of the Lantern Keeper only in whispers. Some said he was as old as the hills themselves, bound to the flame by a vow long forgotten. Others believed he had chosen solitude, a guardian of secrets no one dared uncover. But tonight, the air was different. The rain had begun to fall, steady and patient, drumming against the roof of his hut. The keeper sat by the lantern, its glow warming the lines of his weathered face. He closed his eyes and listened not only to the rain, but to the faint voices it carried. It was on such a night that stories often beget gently, slipping into the silence like a dream. And so, under the lantern's steady light, the keeper's tale unfolded. Asterisk. The Lantern Keeper's hut stood at the very edge of the forest, where the shadows of tall pines stretched long and deep. By day, the hut was an unremarkable plasmon, weather-worn, its wooden planks soft by age and rain. But by night, when the forest turned dark and the air filled with whispers, the glow of the lantern transformed it into something almost otherworldly. The flame was no ordinary light. It shimmered steadily, never flickering too wildly despite the restless winds that swept through the trees. To the villagers in the nearby town, the lantern was a beacon. On misty evenings, when travelers lost their way, they would search for its glow, guiding them safely home. On stormy nights, when thunder shook the valley, families would glance toward the forest's edge and feel comfort knowing the keeper watched. But to the keeper himself, the flame was more than a duty. It was a companion. He had no family, no visitors. His world was the forest, the hut, and the ever-burning lantern. By the dim glow, he read old journals written by hands long gone. Bihitswarmet, he brewed simple teas from dried herbs gathered in the woods. And when the silence of night grew heavy, the flame's gentle crackle was the only voice he trusted. Some nights, though, the keeper wondered if the flame carried more than light. He had heard whispers in the windsoff, almost inaudible, like words spoken in another tongue. Sometimes he thought the rain itself leaned close to the glass, as if listening to the lantern's secrets. One evening, as the rain poured harder than usual, the keeper trimmed the wick and leaned back in his chair. The flame burned steadily, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. His eyes, weary from years of tending, began to close. Then, faintly, he heard it again, the whisper, not from outside, not from the rain, but from within the lantern itself. At first, it was only a murmur. A sigh carried on, invisible air, but then it grew clearer, like a voice rising from memory. Keeper, his eyes opened. The room was still. The forest outside moaned with the wind, but the lantern, its glow had shifted. It pulsed faintly, as though it were breathing. "Keeper," the voice repeated, low and calm, yet echoing in his mind. He leaned forward, heart steady but curious. "Who speaks?" The flame swayed, then steadied again. In its core, he thought he glimpsed something, shapes moving, faint as shadows on water. They formed, dissolved, and reformed, until one outline remained. The figure of a woman, her face serene, her hair flowing like strands of smoke. "I am the memory of the flame," the voice said. "Long have you be alive, though ye do not know my name." The keeper's hands rested on his knees. He did not flinch, perhaps because solitude had made him calm in the face of strangeness, or perhaps because deep inside he had always expected the flame would speak one day. "Then speak now," he said quietly. "Tell me what it is, I God." The flame flickered, casting golden light across the walls. The figure within shifted, her voice like the rustling of leaves in rain. "You guard the passage between dreams and waking. You keep safe the path the travelers walk when the night is deep." Without the flame, the road would vanish. The weary would wander without rest. The lost would never find their way. The keeper listened, his breath slow, his thoughts steady. It was not duty alone that bound him here, then, but purpose. "And why me?" he asked. The flame glowed brighter, warming his lined face. "Because you are patient. Because you listen. Because even in silence, you do not turn away. Others would have sought answers for themselves. You tend, without question. That is why the lantern remains." The rain outside soft, becoming a steady hush. The keeper rose from his chair and placed his palm gently against the glass of the lantern. It was warm, alive, almost like the touch of a hand pressing back. "Then I will continue, a sight simply, as long as I breathe. The flame will not falter." The figure within the flame bowed her head, fading into the steady glow once more. The lantern pulsed once, softly, then settled into its usual burn. The keeper stepped back, exhaling slowly. For the first time in years, he felt not alone, but accompanied. The flame was no longer silent. It had spoke, and though its words had raised more questions than answers, they carried comfort. He returned to his chair, the rain's rhythm soothing against the roof, the lantern's glow steady at his side as he drifted toward rest. One thought lingered in his mind. Perhaps the lantern was not merely a companion. Perhaps it was a storyteller too, holding countless tales within its light, waiting for the right moment to be heard. And so the keeper slept, while the lantern burned on, guarding both him and the night. Beyond the forest where the keeper's lantern glowed, the village lay nestled in a shallow valley. The homes were simple stone walls, thatched roofs, and chimneys that curled smoke into the cool air. A river wound lazily through the fields, its banks lined with willows whose branches dipped low as if listening to the water's endless murmurs. The villagers were not unkind, but they were cautious. They spoke often of the lantern keeper, though few had ever approached him. To them, he was a figure of quiet mystery, distant, solemn, neither friend nor foe. Children whispered stories as they played, daring each other to creep closer to the forest's edge where his hut stood. "He never sleeps," they would say. "The lantern burns because he feeds it with secrets." Others claimed he could speak to shadows, or that the rain itself obeyed his voice. The elders shook their heads at such tales, yet even they admitted there was something unusual about the flame. It had burned for longer than memory allowed, never faltering, even on the darkest nights when storms lashed the valley and winds bent trees nearly to the ground. On those nights, families would draw close to their hearts, and someone would always glance toward the forest. If the glow of the lantern could still be seen, even faintly, they would breathe easier. "The keeper tends the flame," they would say, and a hush of gratitude would settle over the room. One rainy evening, as the market square was closing, a young woman named Mira lingered by the fountain. She was a weaver, her hands skilled with thread, her days long with labor. But unlike many of her neighbors, she did not fear the forest, nor the keeper. Her grandmother, long ago, had told her stories of the flame. "It is not a curse," she had said, "but a gift. One day, when the time is right, the keeper's tale will touch us all." Mira often wondered what her grandmother had meant. The old woman had passed when Mira was still a child, leaving only the warmth of her words and the hum of lullabies she used to sing. Yet Mira carried those stories with her, and when she looked toward the forests at night, she felt not fear, but curiosity. That evening, as the rain fell in gentle sheets, Mira wrapped her shawl tighter and gazed at the horizon. There it was, as always, the faint glow at the forest's edge, a single star, steady and unwavering. Beside her, two villagers exchanged hushed words. "Do you think it's true?" one asked it. "That the flame never dies. It must be," the other replied. "How else would it burn for so many years? Some say it's not fire at all, but something older." Mira listened quietly, her eyes still fixed on the glow. She felt a strange pull, as though the light called to her, not with urgency, but with patience, an invitation waiting for the right moment. The following day, the rain eased, and Mira walked through the village square. Merchants shouted their wares, spices, cloth, carved trinkets. Children darted between stalls, laughter echoing like bells. Yet the conversations she overheard carried the same theme: the lantern. A shepherd spoke of seeing its glow guide him home through thick fog. A traveler swore the light had appeared on the road just as his horse began to falter. Even the baker's wife, practical and skeptical, admitted she sometimes found herself staring at it in the middle of the night, as if reassured by its presence. The lantern had become more than a flame. It was a thread woven quietly into the lives of the villagers, unseen but always felt. Still, none dared to approach the keeper. Not yet. That night, as the moon climbed high and the air grew cool, Mira sat by her window. She had lit a small candle. its flicker casting soft shadows across the room, but her eyes strayed often to the forest's edge. The lantern's glow was steady, visible even from this distance. She wondered what the keeper was doing at that very moment. Was he awake, tending the flame, as he always did? Or was he listening like she was to the quiet songs? The night carried, her thoughts drifted, and she recalled her grandmother's words. Again, one day, the keeper's tale will touch us all. Mira leaned her chin on her hand, her heart heavy with questions. Who was the keeper? What secret lay within the lantern's flame, and why did she feel, more strongly than ever, that the answers were meant for her? In the forest, the keeper sat as he always did beside the lantern, the rain whispering against the roof. The flame glowed softly, and within it, the faintest shapes stirred. He felt the presence of eyes beyond the trees, though they were not threatening. They were curious, watchful, waiting. The flame pulsed once, as though acknowledging it. The keeper closed his eyes and listened. In the silence, he heard the rain's song, the forest's breath, and the faintest echo of something more. The threads of lives weaving closer, drawn by the light. The lantern was not his alone, he realized. Its glow belonged to all who sought it. And soon, perhaps, someone would step beyond the edge of the forest, carrying questions that only the flame could answer. And in her small room in the village, Mira whispered softly to herself, "Tomorrow I will go." Her candle sputtered, then went out, but outside, at the edge of the forest, the lantern burned unsteady, patient, waiting. The morning came soft and muted, wrapped in the aftertaste of rain. Dew clung to every leaf, glistening like tiny crystals, as the sun rose timidly behind pale clouds. The village stirred, awake roosters crowed, hearths were stoked, and merchants laid out their wares, but Mira's heart was already restless. She had not slept deeply. Dreams had tugged at her through the night, dreams filled with dim lantern light and a path lined with shadows. Again and again, she saw herself standing before the forest's edge, the glow of the lantern reaching out to her like a hand dot. Now, as she wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, she whispered to herself, "Today, I will go." Her neighbors were busy sweeping steps, tending gardens, and preparing for the day. Few paid her any mind as she left her home. Yet one old man, seated on a bench near the well, lifted his gaze. His eyes were clouded with age, but sharp enough to notice the direction she walked. "Child," he called softly, "that way leads to the keeper." Mira paused, surprised by the tone of his voice. It was neither warning nor scolding, but something gentler. "I know," she answered quietly. The old man nodded, as though he had expected no less. "If you carry questions, ask them with respect. The lantern is older than all of us." Mira bowed her head, gratitude stirring in her chest. Then she turned and continued, her footsteps steady even as her pulse quickened. The path to the forest was narrow, winding between fields of wildflowers still damp from the night. The air was filled with the scent of earth and blossoms, fresh and alive. Birds called from the hedges, their songs weaving between the rustle of grass. Yet, as Mira approached the tree, the sounds of the village faded behind her. The forest loomed ahead, all dark and timeless. She hesitated for a moment, taking in the sight of ancient trunks rising like pillars, their canopies interlaced to form a roof of shifting green. It was not unwelcoming, but it carried a gravity, a silence that pressed gently against her, asking for reverence. She drew a deep breath, adjusted her shawl, and stepped forward. The forest air was cooler, tinged with the smell of moss and damp bark. Shafts of light pierced through the leaves, scattering across the ground in patches of gold. Every step Mira took was cushioned by fallen leaves, soft and soundless. She followed no marked trail, yet she felt guided. The faint glow of the lantern was visible even through the trees. A distant heartbeat of light. It pulled her forward, steady and sure as they walked. Her mind wandered. She thought of her grandmother's stories, of the villagers' whispers, of the countless nights she had gazed out her window wondering about the keeper. With each step her curiosity grew heavier, like a weight she had carried all her life. And yet, beneath it all, she felt something else calm. The forest did not frighten her. Its silence was not empty, but alive, filled with unseen presences. The flutter of wings overhead, the scurry of a squirrel through the branches, the sigh of wind moving like a ghost between the trunks. At last, she came to a small clearing. There, nestled at the edge of a rise, stood a humble hut of weathered wood. Its roof sagged slightly under the weight of years, but smoke curled gently from the chimney. And beside the hut, burning bright and unwavering, stood the lantern. It was larger than she had imagined, nearly as tall as her shoulder. Its frame was wrought of iron, darkened with age, but strong. The glass panels shimmered with faint reflections, and within, the flame danced calm, steady, and strangely alive. Mira's breath caught in her throat. The lantern's glow was not harsh like fire, but soft, golden, and deep. It seemed to breathe, to pulse in rhythm with the world around it. For a moment, she forgot why she had come at all, lost only in the quiet majesty of the flame. Then, from the doorway of the hut, a voice spoke. "You've come farther than most." Mira startled, turning quickly. An old man stood in the threshold. His hair was silver, long and unbound, and his face bore the lines of countless years. His eyes, however, were sharp and steady, reflecting the lantern's light as though it lived within him. He wore a simple robe, dark and plain, yet it carried an air of dignity. The lantern keeper. Mira's voice trembled before she found it again. "I wanted to see the lantern." The keeper stepped forward slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "Many have wanted," he said. "Few have dared." Mira lowered her eyes, unsure if she had offended him, but the keeper's tone was not unkind. If anything, it was weary, touched by something she could not name. He walked to the lantern and rested a hand gently on its iron frame. The flame within flickered once, as though responding to his touch. "Why do you seek it?" he asked. Mira swallowed, searching for words. I don't know. My grandmother used to tell me it was a gift, not a curse. She said the keeper's tale would touch us all one day. I've always wondered what she meant. The keeper studied her in silence, the rain-streaked wood of his hut behind him, the glow of the lantern painting gold across his face. At last, he spoke. "Your grandmother was wise. The flame is more than it seems. But stories are not given freely, child. They must be carried. They must be understood." Mira lifted her gaze to meet his eyes. "Then teach me. Let me understand." The forest around them seemed to hush, the very air pausing to hear his reply. The keeper turned his face toward the lantern, the flame burning steadily. After a long moment, he nodded once. "Very well," he said softly. "Then sit and listen." Mira sat upon a low wooden stool, her shawl gathered around her shoulders. The lantern keeper moved slowly, with a grace-born not of haste, but of long practice. He poured steaming water into 2 clay cups, the scent of herbs rising into the cool forest air. "Tea," he murmured, handing one to her. His voice was soft, like the creak of old wood, yet steady. "It will help you listen." Mira accepted it with both hands. The warmth seeped into her fingers, grounding her in the moment. The keeper sat across from her, the lantern burning between them. Its glow painted the clearing in hues of amber, chasing away the shadows that pressed at the edges of the forest. "For as long as you have lived," the keeper began, his gaze fixed upon the flame, "you have seen this light. And long before that, before your grandmother, and her grandmother, and all who came before it, has burned Mira Sened, her breath quiet. This flame," he continued, "is not an ordinary fire. It is a memory older than this village, older even than the stones of the valley. It was given to me long ago, not to possess, but to guard, to keep alive." The flame flickered, and Mira swore she saw shapes dance within eye patterns like waves, or perhaps wings. "Whose memory is it?" she asked softly. The keeper's eyes turned to her, sharp yet not unkind. "It is the memory of all who have walked this earth. Every joy, every sorrow, every dream whispered before sleep. The flame remembers what people forget. It holds what time would otherwise steal away." Mira's heart stirred at his words. She thought of her grandmother's lullabies, the laughter of her childhood, the faces of those she had lost. Could it be that all of its every fleeting moment was still alive, burning here in the lantern's glow? "But why you?" she asked. The keeper exhaled slowly. A sigh weighted with years. "Because I was chosen. Or perhaps because I was foolish enough to say yes, Elianit bag." Eyes half closed, as though pulling his thoughts from deep within. "Long ago, I was not as you see me now. I was young, restless, hungry for purpose. I wandered far from home, searching for something I could not name. And in the heart of the wilderness, I found an old flame smaller than, barely clinging to life. It spoke to me, though not with words. It asked only to be kept alive." Mira's cup trembled slightly in her hands. "And you?" "Agreed." The keeper's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I did." Without knowing what it meant, without understanding the weight of years to come. And so the flame bound itself to me. As I kept it, it kept me. Time passed differently after that. The world grew older, yet I remained. His eyes lifted to hers, steady and unflinching. "That is why they whisper in your village, why the children speak of me as though I were a tale, because in truth I am." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the lantern. Mira felt both awe and sorrow pressing against her chest. "You've carried it alone," she whispered. The keeper nodded once. "For longer than I cared to measure. The flame is a comfort, yes, but also a burden. To guard memory is to be weighed by it. Every sorrow, every grief, it all finds its way here." He tapped the glass of the lantern gently, and the flame stirred in response. Mira's throat tightened. She thought of the heaviness in his voice, the lines etched across his face. She thought of the nights she had felt lonely, and how unbearable it would be to feel not only her own sorrow, but the world's. "Then why not let it go?" she asked. The keeper's gaze softened, and for the first time, she saw kindness glimmer in his eyes, because even sorrow is part of life, and life deserves to be remembered. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. The lantern's glow brightened, wrapping them in warmth. Mira sipped her tea, the taste herbal and grounding, and asked the question that had lingered in her heart since she first stepped into the clearing. What happens when you cannot guard it anymore? The keeper was silent for a long time, his eyes turned back to the flame, as though the answer lived there. "One day," he said at last, "another will take my place, not because I command it, but because the flame chooses, just as it chose me." The words settled heavily between them. Mira felt the faintest shiver, though not from fear. Somewhere deep inside, a thought stirred, quiet, insistent. Could it be me? The keeper set his empty cup aside and stood. His movements were slow but deliberate. He approached the lantern, resting both hands upon its frame. The glow painted his skin gold, and in the light, his years seemed to fall away. "Come closer," he said gently. Mira rose, hesitant, and stepped toward him. The lantern pulsed as she approached, its light shimmering like a living thing. "Look," the keeper murmured. She leaned nearer, eyes fixed upon the flame. At first, she saw only fire, ember, and gold, flickering softly. But then, she saw more dark images stirred within the glow. A child laughing as rain fell, a mother humming by firelight, a traveler's weary smile at the sight of home. Countless moments, fleeting yet eternal, swirling like stars caught in glass. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's beautiful." The keeper's voice was low, steady. "It is life." For a time, neither spoke. They simply stood bathed in the lantern's glow, watching memory itself dance before them. Then the keeper turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You asked to understand. Now you see the truth." The flame remembers what people cannot. It is both gift and burden. To hold it is to carry the weight of humanity itself. Mira swallowed hard, her heart racing. She felt the enormity of what he said pressing against her chest. And yet, beneath the weight, she felt something else. Something fierce, something alive. Hope. The lantern flickered, and in its light, Mira thought she saw her grandmother's face smiling, kind, proud. She blinked, and the image faded, leaving only the steady flame. The keeper's gaze lingered on her a moment longer, then he turned back to the hut. "Night is falling soon, Isite. Softly, you should rest. The forest is not kind to those who wander in darkness." Mira nodded, though her thoughts swirled endlessly. She glanced one last time at the lantern, its glow burning steady against the dusk. As she lay that night upon a simple cot the keeper offered, Mira's eyes closed slowly, and her grandmother's words returned to her once more. "One day, the keeper's tale will touch us all." Sleep claimed her, gentle and deep. And outside, the lantern burned on, holding the memory of every dream. The night passed with a depth Mira had rarely known. No restless dreams tugged at her. No cold thoughts lingered at the edge of her sleep. She rested in the quiet rhythm of the forest, her breath in harmony with the hush of leaves and the steady patter of dew falling from branches. When dawn arrived, she woke to the smell of wood smoke and herbs. The keeper was already awake, tending to a small fire outside the hut. A pot simmered above it, steam curling into the pale morning air. "You slept well," he said without turning, his voice calm. "Yes," Mira answered, stretching slowly. "Better than I have in years." The keeper nodded, as though unsurprised. "The lantern's presence eases the mind. It carries away the weight of forgotten things." They ate in silence, the simple meal of broth and bread grounding Mira in its warmth. Yet her thoughts were far from simple. The memory of what she had seen in the flame lingered. Faces, voices, countless lives woven together like threads in a tapestry. Her grandmother's face among them stirred something deep within her, a yearning she could not name. She found herself glancing often at the lantern, burning steady as ever beside the hut. The more she looked, the more she felt a pull, not frightening, not urgent, but insistent, as though the flame were calling her. After the meal, the keeper sat on the worn bench near the lantern. His hands rested upon his knees, his gaze fixed beyond the forest, toward the valley where the village lay. "You feel it, don't you?" Isite, at last, without looking at her. Mira froze. "Feel? What?" The keeper turned his head, his eyes sharp. "The flame. It has touched you." Her heart quickened. She wanted to deny it, but the truth pressed against her too strongly. She lowered her gaze, fingers tightening around the fabric of her shawl. "Yes," she whispered. "When I look at it, I feel as though it knows me, as though it's waiting." The keeper's lips curved faintly, not into a smile, but something like acknowledgement. "It does. The flame remembers all things, and sometimes it remembers in advance." Mira frowned, uncertain. "In advance?" The keeper rose slowly, his robes brushing the ground, and walked to the lantern. He placed a hand upon its frame, his eyes reflecting the soft glow. "The flame does not see time as we do. To it, memory is not past, but presence. What aspe, what is, and what will be, all of it lives within its light. When it calls to someone, It is because their thread is already woven into its story. Mira stepped closer, her pulse racing. And mine is. The keeper's eyes lingered on her for a long moment. Then he nodded, solemn. Yes. Silence pressed around them, broken only by the song of a thrush in the trees. Mira felt her knees weaken slightly, the weight of his words pressing deep into her chest. What does that mean? She whispered that. The keeper looked back to the flame. It means you are not here by accident. The lantern has chosen you. In some way, what form that choice takes. He paused, his voice heavy with something like weariness. That is yet to be seen. Mira reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing the cool iron of the lantern's frame. The flame flickered in response, brighter for a heartbeat. Within its glow, she thought she saw something herself, standing tall, holding the lantern high as shadows receded around her. She gasped softly and pulled back, her breath unsteady. The keeper's eyes did not leave her. You see it, don't you? Mira nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the day unfolded slowly. The keeper went about his quiet tasks, gathering herbs, tending the hut, polishing the lantern's glass, while Mira helped where she could. Yet every moment her attention strayed back to the flame. It seemed brighter now, though she could not tell if it was truly so or if her perception had changed. Each time she looked, new shapes stirred within it, rivers flowing, stars wheeling, hands clasping, eyes weeping. It was endless, and each glimpse left her both humbled and restless. That evening, as twilight deepened and the first stars appeared, Mira sat beside the lantern while the keeper tended the fire inside the hut, alone with the flame. She spoke in a whisper. What do you want from me? The lantern pulsed once, as though answering. Images swirled within. Her grandmother's smile, her own reflection, and the faint outline of the village, bathed in its glow. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She did not know if the flame was asking or offering, but she felt its intent. Connection, inheritance, belonging. The keeper returned quietly, his gaze falling upon her. He said nothing for a while, only watched as she wiped her tears with the back of her sleeve. Finally, he spoke. Do not be afraid of it. The flame does not demand. It only invites. What you do with that invitation is yours to choose. Mira looked up at him, her voice trembling. But if I refuse, then it will wait, the keeper said simply. It always waits. Memory cannot be extinguished. It only passes to another who is willing. His words did not comfort her as much as she hoped, but they steadied her. She nodded slowly, her heart still unsettled. That night, as Mira lay again upon the humble cot, sleep came less as her mind was full of images from the flame, and her heart beat with an unfamiliar rhythm, as though echoing its glow. That she turned on her side, staring toward the doorway where a faint sliver of lantern light crept across the floorboards. The keeper's voice drifted softly through the stillness, though she did not know if he spoke to her or to the flame. Soon, he murmured, it will be her turn to decide. Mira's eyes closed slowly, her breath unsteady, and as sleep claimed her at last, the lantern burned on its glow, reaching not only through the forest, but into her dreams, weaving them with threads of memory she had not yet lived. The following day dawned with the sky heavy and gray. Clouds gathered like ancient sentinels above the forest. The air held the weight of rain yet to fall, and the silence felt deeper than before, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Mira woke with her heart unsettled. The night had been restless, her dreams filled with flickers of lantern light and voices she could not understand. They whispered, not in words, but in feeling sorrow, joy, longing, and something else she could not name. When she stepped outside, the keeper was already there. He stood by the lantern, his hand upon its frame, his face solemn. For the first time since she had met him, Mira saw fatigue not only in his body, but in his spirit, as though the flame's weight pressed heavier upon him than ever before. You feel it too, he said, without looking at her. Mira hesitated. Yes, something is changing. The keeper finally turned, his eyes steady on hers. The flame has chosen its moment. It does not wait forever. They sat together by the hut as the wind stirred the trees. The keeper's voice was low, as though confiding in her, a truth few had ever heard. Every memory has a guardian, child. Every flame must pass from one hand to another, or risk fading into nothing. For years, beyond counting, I have carried this duty. But no, he paused, his breath heavy. Now, the flame no longer clings to me. It leans toward you. Mira's chest tightened. She had felt it, yes, but to hear him say it aloud made the truth undeniable. Why me? She whispered. I am no sage, no elder. I am only a weaver from the village. The keeper's eyes soft, the faintest echo of a smile upon his lips. That is why you are not bound by age or pride. You carry life still unspent, and the flame seeks those who can remember not only sorrow, but hope. Mira lowered her gaze, tears pricking her eyes. She thought of her grandmother, of the lullabies and stories whispered in the dark. Had she been preparing Mira for this all along? The clouds deepened, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The lantern's glow shimmered against the droplets, each one catching its light like a jewel. The keeper stood slowly, his movements deliberate, and beckoned Mira closer. It is time you see its truth, not just glimpses, but the whole of it. She rose, her legs trembling, and stepped toward the lantern. The flame within burned brighter, alive with motion, as though it recognized her approach. Place your hand upon the glass, the keeper instructed. Mira hesitated, then pressed her palm gently against the cool surface. Instantly, warmth surged through her, a pulse of light that filled her chest, racing through her veins, flooding her mind. Her breath caught as visions engulfed her. She saw 1,000 lives at once. Children laughing in fields, elders passing wisdom at hearts, lovers whispering promises beneath the stars. She felt their fears, their triumphs, their griefs. She stood at the edge of countless roads, watching people take steps that shaped generations. She saw her own village, its markets, its laughter, its quiet nights woven into the larger tapestry of humanity. She saw her grandmother's smile again, felt the touch of her hand, heard her voice whispering, "Remember, child, always remember." Tears streamed down Mira's cheeks, but she did not pull away. The flame held her gently, not crushing her beneath its weight, but cradling her in its embrace. For the first time, she understood. Memory was not only burden, it was beauty. When at last the visions faded, she gasped, staggering back slightly. The keeper steadied her, his hand firm on her shoulder. "You see now?" he said quietly. Mira nodded, breathless. "Yes! It's everything. Everything. All of it." The keeper's eyes were heavy, yet there was peace in them. "Then you understand why I can no longer bear it alone. The flame must live beyond me, and it calls to you." Mira's voice trembled. "And if I say no, then the flame will dim, aside simply, not die, but fade until another steps forward." But notice, every memory lost to silence is a wound in the world. Every story forgotten is a thread unraveled. You must decide if you will carry it or let it wait. The choice weighed upon her like stone. She thought of her quiet life in the village, of weaving cloth and selling it in the square, of evenings spent alone at her window. She thought of the keeper, weary yet steadfast, carrying this burden through lifetimes. And then she thought of the flame's visions, of the joy, the love, the hope worth remembering. Her heart whispered the answer before her lips did. "I will carry it," Mira said, her voice soft but sure. The keeper closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. When he opened them again, relief and sorrow mingled there. "Then it is done." He guided her to stand before the lantern. The flame flared, brighter than ever before, its glow spilling into the clearing, chasing the shadows from every corner. The rain fell harder, but not a drop touched the flame. "Place your hand once more," the keeper instructed. Mira obeyed. This time, the warmth did not surge into her, it flowed through her. She felt the flame settle within her chest, a quiet ember joining her heartbeat. The lantern's glow dimmed slightly, but did not fade. It had not left its vessel, but had shared itself, dividing yet whole. The keeper staggered, his hand clutching the lantern for balance, his shoulders bowed, his breath heavy. Mira reached for him, alarm flooding her. "Are you?" He raised a hand, silencing her gently. "It is not death," he murmured. "It is release." The rain softened again, as though the storm itself were bowing in reverence. The keeper straightened, his gaze resting on her with quiet pride. "You will learn in time," he said. "The flame will teach you. It will show you more than I ever could." Mira's throat ached. "But what of you?" "I will rest," he answered simply. "For the first time in many lifetimes, I will rest, and perhaps I will finally dream." A faint smile touched his lips, fragile yet true. Then, without ceremony, he turned and walked into the hut. His form seemed smaller, his steps slower, but his presence lighter, as though a great weight had been lifted. Mira stood in the rain, her hand still pressed to her chest where the ember now lived. The lantern glowed beside her, steady and strong, its flame shared yet undiminished. That night, the village looked out toward the forest and saw the lantern burning brighter than it had in generations. Its light seemed warmer, more alive, carrying with it a promise they could not name. Mira sat beside it, watching the flame, her heart filled with both fear and wonder. She did not know what the days ahead would bring, but she knew one thing with certainty: the flame would not fade. Her grandmother's words echoed once more in her mind. One day, the keeper's tale will touch us all. And as the rain whispered through the leaves and the lantern burned on, Mira realized the tale had only just begun. And so, the lantern burned on, its light carried into new hands, its story woven into new hearts. Tonight, may you to carry a quiet flame within you, gentle, steady, and unafraid of the dark. As the rain whispers outside and the night grows still, allow your mind to drift deeper into peace. Breathe slowly. Let your thoughts soften and surrender to the calm. The world will wait for you until morning. For now, rest. Good night, dear dreamer. Sleep well until we meet again in the next Midnight Tale. Asterisk.